Hello, hello, hello. I've had people asking me why I do not call this the fourth way shows. I call it the Gurdjieff work. I've always called it the Gurdjieff work. I know many people like to use the fourth way, which is fine. And I'm going to do a little show on quotes from Gurdjieff and Ouspensky on the fourth way. And I understand why it's called the fourth way, because there's man number one, man number two, man number three. We've got the monk, the fakir, the yogi, bringing three different ways of doing this kind of work, but each of them is a bit unbalanced. But if we bring all three together, that becomes the fourth way. So I'm going to start with a quote from In Search of the Miraculous. So this is Ouspensky writing. Bit of a long one, so be ready. The fourth way requires no retirement into the desert, does not require a man to give up and renounce everything by which he formerly lived. The fourth way begins much further on than the way of the yogi. This means that a man must be prepared for the fourth way, and this preparation must be acquired in ordinary life and be a very serious one, embracing many sides. A man must be living in conditions which do not render the fourth way impossible. Both in the inner and external life of a man, there may be conditions which create insuperable barriers to the fourth way. The fourth way has no definite forms. First, it has to be found. Many people have never heard of the fourth way, and others deny its existence or possibility. The beginning of the fourth way is easier than the others. It is possible to work and to follow this way while remaining in the usual conditions of life without renouncing or giving up anything. The conditions in which a man is placed at the beginning of his work, in which the work finds him, are the best possible for man, at any rate at the beginning. These conditions are the man himself. So we don't need to become like a monk and go and meditate in a monastery and cut ourselves off from the world. We don't need to be a yogi that renounces everything and goes and lives on the river Ganges or whatever, and don't need to be a fakir to go off and do all the strange exercises and torture that they do. We're bringing together all three, but it's a teaching that can be used in our everyday life. We don't need to come out of this life. We don't need to leave the rat race or give up on our families and our work or anything. This is about working on ourselves in the day-to-day, everyday life, in the modern world, the lunatic asylum that Gurdjieff calls it. And that's what needs changing. That's what needs people like us to go forward and try and develop in, so that we can hopefully over time help the world awaken to its conscience and change and become no longer a lunatic asylum, but a paradise on earth that we can all live in. But in the life that we live at the moment, there's all kinds of things that try to stop us, all kinds of travails that we will come up against. And this is where we are using the work, the Gurdjieff work, in getting through life, because it helps us see life differently to all the people that do not follow these kind of paths, so that we will act differently, we will respond differently to most people. We won't follow the patterns that everybody else does, because hopefully we're more awake. I'm just going to carry on with this quote from In Search of the Miraculous. It's page 48 in my book. The fourth way affects simultaneously all sides of a man's being. It is work on the three rooms at once. The fakir works on the first room, the monk on the second, the yogi on the third. The principal demand is the demand for understanding. A man must do nothing that he does not understand, except as an experiment under the direction of his teacher. The more a man understands what he is doing, the greater will be the result of his efforts. He must satisfy himself of the truth of what he is told, and until he is satisfied, he must do nothing. The method of the fourth way consists in doing something in one room and simultaneously doing something corresponding to it in the other two rooms. That is, while working on the physical body, to work simultaneously on the mind and emotions. So again, it's coming back to that balance. We don't want to just think things or just feel the way we are or just act physically the way we are. We want to bring all three together so that we're thinking, feeling and being all harmonized, so that we are using all our centers. And continuing on In Search of the Miraculous. But on the fourth way, knowledge is still more exact and perfect. A man who follows the fourth way knows quite definitely what substances he needs for his aims, and he knows that these substances can be produced within the body by a month of physical suffering, a week of emotional strain, or by a day of mental exercises. And also that they can be introduced into the organism from without if it is known how to do it by reading these books. He simply prepares and swallows a little pill which contains all the substances he wants, and in this way, without loss of time, he obtains the required results. Matrix viewers, red pill or blue pill. You know, it's kind of, this is the kind of path that once you start taking it, it's very difficult to turn back and go back to being asleep, because you will see things are different. You notice how strange this is, this life that we lead, and you want to find the truth in everything. You're being a seeker of truth. So in search of the miraculous, schools of the fourth way demand understanding before anything else. Results of efforts are always proportional to understanding. And I've done shows about knowledge and wisdom. You know, we can get the knowledge to do all this, but we have to have the wisdom to make it work. They have to be acquired in balance. You know, you want your knowledge and wisdom coming up together, working. Knowledge gains a little bit, and then the wisdom works on it and goes, oh yes, that's what I'm using this for. And then a little bit more knowledge comes your way, a bit more wisdom, blah blah blah. So, you know, work on it. The conditions for ascending the stairway on the fourth way are that a man cannot ascend to a higher step until he places another man on his own step. And again, this is the ladder as we're going up. There's many people in front of us, many people behind us. We're all helping each other go up the ladder to develop ourselves and reach the higher states. Right, so in search of the miraculous, continuing. The fourth way differs from the others by the fact that it is never a permanent way. And you'll probably notice this, you know, I have myself, things change. It's not caught up in patterns. So you're not doing the same thing over and over again. You're not going to a monastery, you know, waking up at the crack of dawn for salutations to the sun and prayers and meditations before breakfast, and then a little bit of meditation afterwards. It's not a routine. Things change. Right, so it has no definite forms, and there are no institutions connected with it. It appears and disappears, governed by some peculiar laws of its own. The fourth way is never without some work of a definite significance, never without some undertaking, around which and in connection with which it alone can exist. Schools of the fourth way never exist by themselves as schools for the purpose of education and instruction. The quicker a man grasps the aim of the work which is being executed, the quicker he can become useful to it, and the more will he be able to get from it for himself. Work, 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 effort, effort, effort has to be put in all the time. Sorry, it makes me giggle. You know, it's not something you can just learn by rote. We need to study it, let it come in, work on us, on our inner selves, in our inner life, our inner conscience, so that we can make it come out. You know, what comes in must come out, but we want good stuff to come out, not just out of our mouths. I mean, out of our actions, out of our thoughts, out of our emotions. And Ouspensky goes on to write, when the work is done, the schools close. The people who began the work leave the stage. Those who have learned from them what was possible to learn and have reached the possibility of continuing their work independently, begin in one form or another their own personal work. And this was something Gurdjieff was on about lots. He'd have all these people come and work with him and develop themselves and learn, and then he'd send them off. Off you go. Got to do it yourself now. Can't be holding on to my apron strings continuously. Got to do it yourself. Okay, we haven't got Gurdjieff here to tell us when we're ready to do it by ourselves, but we have the books. The books can teach us, and then there's also lots of fourth way Gurdjieff teachers out there online. I've been noticing more and more have been popping up, which is great. So there's other ways of learning these things. As we're coming out of lockdown, so hopefully schools, Gurdjieff societies are opening and the classes are opening again, or the the groups or whatever you want to call them, Gurdjieff groups, and you might be able to find one near you that you can go to. You know, we're not alone in this. Many people are doing this. Sometimes we feel like we're alone, but we're not. We're here. And this is one of my favourite quotes from Ouspensky about this. In order to give the fourth way a right valuation, a man must have thought and felt and been disappointed in many things beforehand. And that is kind of what brings us to this work. We realise that the life that we're leading and being shown by our peers and our schools and our families, you know, people that are asleep and mechanical, you know, we've got this inkling that something else is going on behind it, that there is a more genuine real life. And that's why, you know, we have to have a little bit of suffering and disappointment to make us go forward. You know, if everyone was happy in the mechanical lives, are they? You know, they just think it's part of it. You know, shit happens is what they say. Sorry to swear there, but and then they just carry on. Well, when that happens to us, we're wanting to change it and change ourselves and live more true, because we realize that a lot of this shit that happens is because of mechanical forces going on, and we're not attuned to what's the real harmonious vibrations coming down from the divine source. That's what we're trying to get to. This is why, you know, in the past, monks disappeared off to monasteries because they weren't happy with the way life was and wanted to reconnect with God. Yogis did the same thing, went off and, you know, developed themselves in their own yogic way. And fakirs realized, took themselves out of the mainstream life and worked on themselves. And we're doing the same thing, but we can't go and hide away somewhere. We need to work on ourselves, living in the moment and living in this lunatic asylum. So, from the views from the real world, there's a question. Does the work of the Institute necessitate giving up your... Let me start that again. Does the work of the Institute necessitate giving up our own work for some years, or can it be carried on at the same time? And Gurdjieff replies, Institute work is inner work. So far, you only do outer work, but this is quite different. For some, it may be necessary to stop outer work. For others, not. You know, we haven't got Mr. Gurdjieff to tell us whether we need to skip out or not. I know many of us would love to jump out of the mechanical way of living and go and, you know, retreat somewhere and just work on ourselves, but it's not really that possible in this day and age unless you've got lots and lots of money and can afford to, you know, do that. I myself have to pay bills and pay for my rent with a bedsit, blah blah blah, so I need to go to work, so I'm still caught up in the mechanical world. But I try and take what I've learned from this work, fourth way, let's call it that, since it shows about this, and put it into my life when I'm out there. I do forget lots, I get distracted easily, but when it does remind me, or when I do remind myself, it makes things so much different. It makes life much more easier. So, views from the real world, page 203, in my version. The fourth way is the way of Hadhya Yogi. Like the yogi, the Hadhya Yogi studies everything that can be studied. There is a certain prepared knowledge that speeds up work on the way. And this is one of the things about these books. We've got the books, we might not be able to get to a teacher. If you can get to a group, even better. That will help you speed up the way. Reading the books and studying the books helps you speed up your process. In order to obtain a certain substance, a yogi must do a breathing exercise for a certain time. But a Hadhya yogi has a certain apparatus with which he can collect from the air the elements required for his body. A yogi does for a year what an Hadhya yogi does in a month. All these ways aim at one thing, to transform C inwardly into a new body. So we've got the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. So to get the C into our bodies, we've got the books to read and work on ourselves and to give us information, books to read, the Gurdjieff books to ponder on, and Ouspensky books to ponder on, C.S. Knott books to ponder on. And if, you know, we can get to teachers or groups, then we can discuss it with them to help us with our pondering. So I'm going to do a little bit of all and everything. page 17. The system of the angel Hariton consists of only a single cylinder shaped like an ordinary barrel. If any cosmic gaseous substance whatever enters the space, it immediately expands. The bottom of this cylinder barrel is hermetically sealed, but its lid, although it can be closely shut, is so arranged on hinges that at a pressure from within it can be opened and shut again. If this cylinder barrel is filled with atmosphere, air, or any other substance, then from the action of the walls of this peculiar cylinder barrel, these substances expand to such an extent that the interior becomes too small to hold them. Striving to find an outlet, they press against the lid of the cylinder barrel. The lid opens and, having allowed these expanded substances to escape, immediately closes again. Then the cylinder barrel is again filled with fresh substances from outside. This works the fans attached to the sides and stern of the ship. Thus, in spaces where there is no resistance, contemporary ships like ours simply fall towards the nearest stability. But in spaces where there are any cosmic substances which offer resistance, these substances, whatever their density, with the aid of this cylinder, enable the ship to move in the desired direction. And that's a great chapter to read. Go and read that in All and Everything for your homework for the evening. But this could be talking about us, about our bodies, about our, excuse me, working on ourselves. And our bodies are that hermetically sealed cylinder, taking it in, letting it work on ourselves, opening up and going out. You know, read that, read that subject, that chapter again, and perhaps apply it to yourself, to your body. So Gurdjieff not says, concerning the system of spaceships, we can say that Gurdjieff's system is a psychological system which requires active work on the part of the pupil. It replaces the older passive system of faith, love, and hope. What is the cylinder? The barrel was hermetically sealed with the seal of Hermes, who taught this method, which is the sly man's way. The denser the substances, the fog and gas of negative emotions, provided you know how to use them, the better the ship goes. And Knott was told this by Orage. So I had to pause then to have a little drink. I don't know if the Zoom comes out where it says, this meeting is recording. But anyway, Knott writes, in this fourth way, each in his own fashion has to work out in life what he has learned from the teacher. So, you know, I was saying before about the teacher sends you off, got to go and ponder about it all, got to think about what's being taught to you. You know, and I suppose, like I was saying, read that chapter that I was just reading from All and Everything and go and ponder on it all. I've told you where to go and look for it. Now it's your turn to go and study it. Not that I'm the teacher, but I'm taking teacher's role today. So I was going to do a John Godolphin Bennett quote to end, because I love John Godolphin Bennett. This is from Witness. The older spaceships worked by attraction and repulsion and required incessant care and constant refueling. This refers to the old law of reward and punishment. The improved spaceships of Saint Venoma worked by attraction. Man could be saved by faith and love. He required only to trust himself to the medium. It is not hard to recognize in this a description of the Pauline account of the Christian gospel or Mohammed's doctrine of salvation by hope. The defect of these doctrines is that they do not allow for the hazards of the existing world. The atmosphere refers to the short-range field of force that surrounds every entity. I can be a good Christian or a good Muslim as long as no one treads on my toes. The latest system invented by the Archangel Hariton takes account of the realities of existence, the very cause of trouble, the irritation caused by the behavior of others, can be turned into a transformative force. Gurdjieff's methods of work on oneself abound in examples of turning negative forces to positive account. And that's what we should be doing in our everyday lives as we're going out into the material world, into the mainstream life, where people do tread on our toes. Doesn't mean we need to go and tread on other people's toes because we think, oh, we're helping them, because we're not. We want people, if people are treading on our toes, that's when we deal with it. You know, we're not developed enough to be able to go and tread on other people's toes. So it will happen accidentally, you know, in the mainstream life, when we forget ourselves, we will tread on toes. But again, as I said, go and reread that All and Everything chapter with the Archangel Haraton and about the spaceships, and try and apply it to what you think it means about yourself, and how these spaceships, we are the spaceships developing ourselves, going forward through the cosmos on a harmonious journey. Thanks everybody for listening. Pleasure to see you all again. Until next time, adios.